No blood, no tracks, few clues. A mysterious murder scene. So brutal, so bizarre. Are humans capable of such an act? Or could this be the work of aliens on an intergalactic mission? Walk along the razor's edge between science fiction and science fact as we open UFO Files: Cattle Mutilations. Suddenly shaken by a gruesome discovery. A cow on Larry Jurgen's ranch is discovered dead, mutilated in a remote canyon on his property.
Well, first thing I did, I come around the corner up there, and I seen this cow laying here, and I thought, well, it's just an old cow that dropped dead. I wanted to see how old of a cow it was, and then the more investigation I seen her bag was gone. And I opened her mouth up and her tongue was gone.
But this is where the story goes from unusual to strange.
I picked up her leg, and the first thing I noticed, and her udder was cut off. And there was a round circle about that size there, just a round circle where her udder was. Well, the tongue was gone, and I think that one eyeball, the eye on the other side was gone.
Standing over the remains, the ranchers are stunned by the fact there is no blood anywhere to be found on or around the scene. Strangely, the damage to the hide seems precise and deliberate. This does not appear to be the work of predators. The ranchers are perplexed.
That's part of this strange thing called an animal mutilation mystery. And in addition, the eye that was up, there was a circle of flesh. You can see that in the fresh photograph.
Linda Howe may know more about cattle mutilations than any other researcher. She has written books, produced documentaries, and investigated more than 1,000 cattle mutilation cases in the past 25 years. Farnham, Nebraska is her latest. Cattle mutilation cases tend to show several commonalities, and this cow is no different.
The udder had been removed in a circle, a very clean, bloodless circle. So the Larry Jurgen case definitely fell in the category of classic mutilation, and it had the addition of 2 holes that he found in the chest.
It is the appearance of bloodless, surgically precise excisions on specific body parts that qualify some cases as so-called classic mutilations.
You may see part of the jaws being removed, an eye removed, an ear removed, sexual organs being cut out. A lot of the cases, classic cases, have what we call coring of the rectum. As you know, cattle have quite a lot of blood. Humans have approximately 1 gallon of blood in their bodies. And you can imagine how much blood a cow would have. And there's none anywhere.
However, those in the veterinary field are hesitant to describe these conditions as mysterious.
Just the fact that there is no blood around on the ground does not mean at all that the animal did not have any blood. That just doesn't work. You can't tell by just looking at the ground around a dead animal.
Oddly, other animals will stay away from the site of the killing. And in many cases, a thunder and lightning storm reported on or about the date of the event. While these deaths occur in remote canyons or hillsides, away from prying eyes, the events are not restricted to domestic pastures.
The animal mutilation phenomena really is a global issue. And when you go out into the world, you realize that just like in the United States, there are hot spots, and they have been the same repetitive hot spots for 50, 60 years. Maybe this has been going on for millions of years, and we just caught on.
The long history of cattle mutilations has still another unusual element. The presence of unidentified flying objects, UFOs. Perhaps the earliest written document on the subject is a newspaper article and sworn affidavit that involved a cow, a politician, and a UFO in a story that predated the 20th century.
Well, back in 1897, it was probably the earliest recorded case of a cattle mutilation. Alexander Hamilton, a member of the House of Representatives in Kansas, reported that a 300-foot-long cylindrical object landed in his farm, picked up one of his cattle, and abducted it. The one thing that politicians need is a good reputation. I truly believe this is an actual case. I think this was probably the first verifiable story of abduction, a cattle mutilation case.
Well, it turns out that Mr. Hamilton was a member of a Liars Club, and he later cheerfully admitted this was just a tall tale that he had made up.
Whether the story is true or not, clearly the subject was publicly discussed before the 1900s. 50 years before Roswell and the sci-fi movie craze that filled our modern minds with images of UFOs. Cattle, horses, sheep, and other animals may have been mutilated as well, but were overlooked because the phenomena was not defined or communicated publicly.
Well, there wasn't any mention that I'm aware of really in the first half of the 20th century. I think the first case that we really know about is the 1967 case in Alamosa, Colorado. Snippy was the press's term for the horse. The horse's actual name was Lady. They, in their effort to get the facts straight, got the horse's name wrong. But Snippy was found in the middle of a field by her owners, and had all the classic signs and symptoms of a cattle mutilation. Once again, had surgical, precise type cuts that were found. There's no tracks or footprints found anywhere. The sheriff's office investigated this, and they could not come to a conclusion one way or the other what it was. And to this day, it's an unsolved case.
Over the years, one key element of evidence was eerily similar.
So, with the mutilations being strange, you have even higher strangeness of huge sounds and nothing there, or complete silence with what looks like helicopters.
Well, I think people are seeing something in the sky while this is happening. Beforehand, people will hear loud noises that they describe as being similar to a jet aircraft engine. Sometimes it's so loud that their whole house vibrates. Other people are seeing bright orange lights in the sky. So we really don't know what we're dealing with, but this is a very common part of the cattle mutilation case, is that you'll get reports of UFOs in the area.
Such was the case in Farnham. Residents started to share stories of unusual sights and sounds on the night the Jurgens cow was killed. The rancher turned to the internet looking for information. He found Linda Moulton Howe.
I'll often get a fax or an email or a phone call either from a rancher directly or for somebody who says, we read about your work and here's a dead animal, and that's what happened with the Larry Jurgens ranch in Farnham, Nebraska.
She knows what clues to look for and how to acquire the forensic evidence to understand cattle mutilations. And this rancher is counting on her to figure out who or what did this to his cow. When we return, Howe attempts to unravel the murder mystery on the Jurgens Ranch. cattle mutilation expert Linda Howe arrived at the ranch in Farnham, Nebraska to begin the investigation of the unusual death of Larry Jurgen's cow. The location was remote and hard to access, but once there, Howe approached slowly, making preliminary observations through the lens of her camera.
I am on a north-south axis with this animal. One of the interesting things is, this is a 360-degree, surrounded by hills. Whatever happened in here, it could operate without anybody seeing it.
She was looking for the classic indications of an authentic mutilation. As she stepped around fairly fresh cow dung, indicating the herd had been there a few days ago, she noted the far distance being maintained by other cattle at the time. Further documentation was made of the area and the orientation of the body. The cow lay dead for nearly a week. Then she went in for a closer look.
The ears are intact, so this one is one of the few in which the ear is not taken. You can tell even now with the collapse of the body in death that this was a very large, healthy animal, and she had given birth to a calf that had grown to 400 pounds, so she was a very healthy animal.
Despite days of decay and maggot infestation, there were no body parts or organs strewn about in a manner typically found when predators or scavengers strike. For generations, cattle mutilations have revealed livestock disembodied under mysterious circumstances and bizarre facts. The remote settings, surgical precision, absence of evidence, no claims of responsibility, and the huge geographic area covered over decades have led some researchers to extraordinary conclusions.
Well, some people do make the connection that this is an extraterrestrial event, and really there's no evidence one way or the other. But then there's no evidence that humans are involved in this either. However, they do see UFOs in the area, and leads a lot of us to come to conclusions that this could possibly be aliens involved.
Does our government have these craft? And if they have the craft, do they have hard proof that that which is in the craft is involved with the animal mutilations?
If they exist, UFOs could account for the rumblings heard and the lights seen in the sky. Or even the cattle mutilations.
By 1989, I had become personally convinced that extraterrestrial biological entities or something from outer space being involved. This was, in fact, the story.
A story that tells of spaceships that may have the technology to levitate cows up to the craft, perform the surgical excisions, and then let them plummet to the earth.
And when you find that the cow had dropped on its muscles, it's consistent with people who said they've seen animals drop from glowing discs in the sky to the ground.
Would aliens possess the technology capable of performing bloodless surgery with precision, a process that humans would have trouble carrying out?
Most of the cases that we find, the cause of death is exsanguination, complete loss of blood within the body. We don't have the surgical equipment that it takes to do that kind of thing. The kind of vacuum that would require to do that is just not available, even in hospitals, let alone in the field.
But even if extraterrestrials had the ability to conduct this long-term killing spree, is there a motivation?
Some people say that the ET's motivation behind this is genetics, that they're involved in our DNA. And cattle DNA is very similar to humans.
This suggests that aliens are harvesting bovine biology as part of a mission that serves some greater galactic purpose. One that is well beyond human understanding and is vital to alien survival.
They can use that genetic manipulation to fill in. It's not quite Jurassic Park, where you're skipping a few genetic codes to get to the dinosaurs from the amphibians, as they did in that film. But they do have unbelievable high technology when it comes to genetic mentality. So they can use cattle for their research and sometimes to fill in the gaps that they don't have enough human DNA for.
Also that human blood is transferable with cattle blood in emergencies. So there's enough similarity between us and the bovine to make me believe that there's some sort of research being done on our DNA.
The idea of aliens collecting blood from cows in order to extract DNA for some unfathomable genetic research easily attracts skeptics.
That extraterrestrials are doing animal mutilations is the least likely explanation.
Within veterinary circles, such theories may sound a bit too alien to be scientifically grounded.
I'm not aware of that at all, that there's that much similarity between human and bovine blood. A human has 46 chromosomes. A cow has 60 chromosomes, so there's a difference right there. Are they that closely related? I don't think so, but I don't know.
UFO believers aside, there are many who don't look that far for answers. They contend these mysterious mutilation occurrences are simply the work of pranksters or some dark cult ritual.
I have seen instances where animals were mutilated or maimed, but in all those instances it was corroborated with law enforcement effort, people that it was actually the act of a mentally ill person. But otherwise, I've never seen an unexplained mutilation.
We've been 30 years, 40 years now of these abductions, and nobody's ever seen a human involved in this. There's never been a farmer come across somebody in the middle of some sort of a satanic ritual or something.
For the ranchers in the western prairie states, cattle mutilations are a loss of inventory and a loss of revenue. And they want some answers. Coming up, the number of mutilation cases grows and the FBI gets called in.
First thing he says to me, you know, I'm going to prove that this is nothing but Predator.
By 1975, cattle mutilation mysteries were so prolific, Colorado Senator Floyd Haskell asked the U.S. government for help. In a request dated August 29, 1975, Haskell wrote, "I'm asking that the Federal Bureau of Investigation enter the case. Although the Colorado Bureau of Investigation has been investigating the incidents, the lack of central unified direction has frustrated the investigation."
The Colorado Bureau of Investigation got involved in this in the late 70s because there were so many complaints from farmers that they were losing their cattle. Well, this is their livelihood, and they're losing valuable cattle every day.
Haskell's letter warned, it now appears that ranchers are arming themselves to protect their livestock and their families. Clearly, something must be done before somebody gets hurt.
They didn't really have an idea what was going on.
Before the whole animal mutilation craze happened, ranchers were just going out and finding dead animals and scratching their heads and saying, I guess old Betsy just keeled over and the predators got her.
In his reply to Senator Haskell, FBI Director Clarence Kelly wrote, "I regret to inform you that these actions do not constitute a violation of federal law, coming within the FBI's investigative jurisdiction." March 14, 1979, New Mexico Senator Harrison Schmitt a former Apollo astronaut, called for a federal investigation citing the mutilation phenomena crossed state lines.
I think they really thought at one point that it could have alien involvement. They really, at the final conclusion of it all, they just really came to the point where they thought that it needed more investigation.
This led to the investigation headed by Kenneth Rommel, who retired from the FBI in May 1979, and shortly afterwards assumed the role of Director of Investigations for Operation Animal Mutilation for the state of New Mexico.
He looked at many cases, and he was fairly open-minded with his investigation from the report that I've read.
Rommel had hundreds of historical and current cases to investigate.
Somehow I think his opinion of what happened changed throughout his tenure with the New Mexico government.
Cattle mutilation researcher Linda Howe had a first-hand experience with Rommel.
So we get into the office of Kenneth Rommel, and I'm there to do an interview as a reporter with an investigator working for the state of New Mexico. And we sit down and we're getting ready, and first thing he says to me, you know, I'm going to prove that this is nothing but predator.
After 1 year of research, Rommel submitted his final report. It stated, after laboriously weighing and analyzing the evidence, I have come to the conclusion that the vast majority of mutilations are caused by predators and scavengers.
All of the news media were doing stories about what is this mystery that is stalking the prairie.
The subject transitioned from a rural myth to front-page headlines. News reports elevated the phrase cattle mutilation into the lexicon for strange, unexplained, and paranormal research. Cattle mutilations, like most UFO-related phenomena, have lurked in the shadows of U.S. government conspiracies since the days of the Roswell incident.
It's hard to imagine why the United States government, for any reason, would go out and mutilate cattle. I cannot imagine why. And if they did so, why they would do so in a way that seems to mimic the work of predators.
The government theory doesn't make sense because the head of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation had said to me, if the CIA, NSA, DIA, FBI, if they were all involved in animal mutilations for some covert government project, they just go out and buy what they needed. They just take them to one of the military bases. They would do whatever they're going to do, and no one would know.
We can't prove that the government's involved in this. We can't say that there's extraterrestrials involved in this. We can't say that there are even extraterrestrials out there. There's no proof. They haven't landed on the White House lawn yet.
But Linda Howe has seen too many dead animals to subscribe to the government's position that all unusual deaths are the act of predators. Perhaps an answer to the question of alien involvement can be derived from the Farnham case. When we return, there is shocking news. A second cow is down. And Linda's investigation reveals what eyewitnesses saw.
Yeah, you didn't see an airplane, so the only thing you were seeing was that white light.
That's right.
August 25th, 2004. Jurgens Ranch, Farnham, Nebraska. Cattle mutilation research expert Linda Moulton Howe completes her photo documentation of the area near the dead cow. Then, she carefully collects samples of the surrounding vegetation.
And I want to make sure that I'm getting enough green chlorophyll because there's a very accurate test having to do with the measurement of the metabolism in anything that is growing with chlorophyll to see if there has been an impact on the mitochondria.
Elementary earth science describes chlorophyll as green growth matter in plants, whereas mitochondria contains the genetic material of vegetation. Hal wants to learn if these microscopic components were altered. So she records the locations and labels each of the grass samples she takes from around the body.
I'm taking about 75 feet north of the body. 75 to 100 feet is about as far out as, or as close to the body as you want to get when you are doing controls, trying to find what is the normal soil and grass. And then I'm going to walk in a ring around to the west. Okay, I'm about the same distance from the body, straight west.
She uses this same method of collecting and recording evidence as she gathers soil samples from the site. Then, armed with a strong magnet, she delicately tries to attract any iron material from the ground surface near the cow.
And I'm going to drag the magnet around the animal, and I'm going to go out in a spiral and see if we get any particles from any of this ground. Sometimes we find magnetite, which is unusual at some of these scenes. And in some of these cases, around mutilations and crop circles, what we have found is 750 times more magnetite that clings to a magnet than in normal soil. And that's why we do this, because if we get a big number, then we'll know something strange happened. And after I have done this, I'll put this magnet back in the plastic bag so that anything that I have collected will stay in the bag, and they will examine all of this under a microscope back at biophysicist Levin Good's lab.
Now, magnetite is the highly magnetic form of iron oxide. Magnetite is a very black, solid crystalline form.
Magnetite is found all over the globe, but the indications of higher concentration around sites associated with UFO activity may be an important scientific finding.
And the fact that we find these changes in grass and plants that are very similar in some cases, we're wondering if some kind of similar technology is involved, and if so, whose and why.
Hal soon turns her focus on the two curious holes found in the cow's upper body.
We're dealing now with something that is really closer to about an eighth of an inch.
You try to poke your finger through, or pencil through her hide anyplace else, you won't be able to poke it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, help me find the second hole. And when they did the necropsy on that one in Colorado, that was one of the cows when they found that the heart muscle was totally removed from inside the pericardium. The pericardium was intact, and the only thing that they could figure out was somehow that quarter-inch hole had something to do with what happened inside the cow.
Could this hole actually be a conduit that leads to the heart?
It's all muscle, pretty muscle and connective tissue, other elastic tissue. And the pericardial sac, I've not seen a situation where the heart actually just became soft mush and the pericardial sac was not affected.
With the help of the rancher, an important section of the cow's hide with the small holes is cut and removed for further analysis.
Yeah, now, let's bring this out here on the ground and see if we've got, let's lay that down and see now if we can find that second hole any easier. It should have been somewhere.
Yeah, right here. Oh, that's odd, isn't it?
After several hours of investigation, the team receives word that a nearby rancher has just discovered another cow down. They rush to a remote canyon on his property 7 miles away.
And you just saw this today?
This morning, yep.
Well, she could have died last night.
She could have. She could have been here, as far as I know, 48 hours is just my guess. Because I didn't see anything sitting here yesterday. But I could have just...
So it could be 48 hours. It'd have to be between last night and now.
Hal and the others find a similar scenario. She photo documents the second cow and interviews the second rancher. Considering this as another hidden canyon, she is intrigued by the similarities of the two cases.
The most classic part of this is the one missing teat and the missing tongue, that we can't see it in the mouth at all.
The disappearance of the tongue is not easily explained.
A predator's not going to be able to latch onto a tongue and tear it off unless it's really rotten, decomposed. What they typically do is bite away at it a little bit at a time, and they just keep pecking at it. If it's a bird, if it's a small rodent, they're just going to keep chewing at it. One explanation for the tongue being back in the mouth, that it was out, and as the other tissues start to contract, it may pull it back into the mouth.
What's your take on this deal? Is it just some wacko doing wild stuff, or what?
It'd have to be a wacko that had access to the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere and every country you can think of, because it's worldwide. It's been going on since at least the 50s. And nobody has ever once been arrested and arraigned on an animal mutilation charge, not anywhere in the world.
Her interviews with these ranchers reveal there have been reports of some local residents hearing strange noises and seeing lights in the sky on the nights in question.
I was in bed, and I was asleep and startled out of a deep sleep
By
a loud noise. It sounded like an airplane or a helicopter or something going over the house. It almost scared me enough to think that it was going to run into the house.
And how long do you think you lay listening to it?
It was probably 30 to 40 seconds. It was almost like a helicopter, but I wouldn't say it was totally like one. It was just real loud, like a loud airplane, or... I mean, I'm right next to the road where there's trucks and vehicles going up and down the road, and it didn't sound like any of those.
Strange, though.
It's strange. Scary.
Stories of the unidentified flying object were recorded many miles away from the ranches where the mutilated cattle lie.
That it sounded like an aircraft coming in low, because it was a loud rumbly sound, and it lasted for a while. And then he came in about that time, and I asked him what that was, and he went outside.
And Dan, what did you see when you went out?
Didn't see it, but I did see a white light going that way, and a low flying, had to be an airplane.
So the only
Didn't see an airplane.
Yeah, you didn't see an airplane, so the only thing you were seeing was that white light.
That's right.
With the field investigation complete, the samples are immediately sent to laboratories in Michigan and Pennsylvania for forensic analysis. When we return, the test results. 2 weeks after the Nebraska cattle mutilation investigation, researcher Linda Howe met with Dr. W.C. Levengood at the Pinelandia Biophysics Lab in Michigan to review his findings of the soil samples she collected in Farnham. He's looking for microscopic balls of black magnetite and iron oxide, and the reddish spheres of an iron ore called hematite, which are frequently found in high concentration at cattle mutilation sites.
This is magnetic drag material from the Farnham. And the main thing here is you'll see that the tiny, tiny magnetite and hematite particles are extremely small, from 5 to 20 microns in diameter, which is very small. Some cases we get up 30 to 40 microns, but this particular sample is just these tiny particles strewn all over the soil.
So we do have magnetite from the mutilation site of Farnham.
Yes, yeah.
Magnetite can be found in the meteoric dust floating in space. Dr. Levengood suggests that it can get mixed into plasma energy, like the aurora borealis, commonly known as the Northern Lights.
This occurs way up in the ionosphere, about 60 to 100 miles above the Earth. These are self-organized energies that form what we call plasma vortices.
These atmospheric anomalies can swirl around so quickly that, like a tornado, they can spin to Earth and pull the magnetite with it. This spiral of energy may explain how the increased density of magnetite gets on the ground.
We're not talking about an energy that produces the bovine excision. We're talking about a number of interacting energies, what we call in science boundary conditions.
Linda Howe's explanation is that extraterrestrial technology targets these plasma energies at cattle.
And what we're looking at in this microscope, in a way, is kind of like the trail, the connection between that energy in the upper atmosphere that has come down and done something to this grass and to this soil. The magnetite is like proof of some unusual interaction.
It's a strong indication, yes.
Dr. Levengood also analyzed the grass samples and calculated subtle changes in the growth patterns caused by undetermined energies.
In Farnham, what you have found, the red and the blue, is that some energy is destructive and some energy is actually accelerating growth?
That's correct, yeah. And the neat part of it is, on this method, what we can do is we know that the way this energy changes with time in the grass follows a very precise mathematical function. So we can apply that function and see if this is actually metabolizing normally or not.
Dr. Levengood's analysis indicated Linda's grass samples were taken in a circular pattern around the cow.
This one is the one taken at the west end, and it follows it, but notice how the slope, it's very almost flat. But of the animal, but it still follows that, it's still metabolizing grass. And this is the one taken showing the very high energy input. And you can see the difference in the slope of those two.
And this is the one that was north or northwest.
That was the one that had the accelerated growth.
And when your data, you found that there was a direction and a change in the energy before you've even seen these photos.
Yeah, now that...
Even though Dr. Levengood had not seen these images before, his findings were consistent with the photographs from the Farnham site.
That's where the energy was destructive.
That's right.
And the graph is related to energy out here.
Yeah, it'd be over in here somewhere.
Suggesting that something came in from the northwest.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Unbeknownst to Dr. Levengood, this is a significant conclusion because the witnesses to the strange lights and rumbling sounds also describe the direction of flight from the northwest. This hide sample removed from Larry Jurgen's mutilated cow featured 2 small holes that Hal believes indicate surgical access to the cow's heart area. The specimen was examined by the Chief of Pathology of Large Animals at the University of Pennsylvania's Animal Diagnostic Laboratory.
He wrote a report as honestly as he could. And what is so interesting, talking with him personally and reading the hard text of his report, he cannot rule out thermal influence at that hole. Cannot rule it out.
I've been a pathologist for 27 years. I have not posted a cow where I felt there was an unusual circumstance of why the tongue or the udder or the rectum was removed that was not explainable by predators.
Regardless of the outcome of the laboratory testing, this level of forensic investigation underscores the mysterious circumstances surrounding cattle mutilations and a question of UFO intervention.
Our government still stands by the Rommel report from 1979 that these abduction cases are nothing more than humans being involved or predators being involved. Aliens have nothing to do with it, and the government has nothing to do with it.
There is really no evidence that extraterrestrials of any kind are involved with animal mutilation. No evidence. No good evidence.
In the final analysis, no witness admits to seeing the cow being mutilated. There has been no claim of responsibility from cults, pranksters, or aliens. And there is no hard proof of secret government operations or UFOs. In Farnham, the facts stand. No blood, no tracks, and 2 more cows have been added to the growing list of dead animals that some call cattle mutilations.
Riveting films, 10 award-winning filmmakers, 1 unprecedented event, 10 days that unexpectedly changed America. Sunday night at 9, 8 Central, only on the History Channel.
In this documentary, you will see miraculous UFO footage that has been authenticated by top UFO.
The documentary featured an extensive summary of the footage, the canisters containing the footage, an expert analysis from the likes of Stanton Friedman. One film expert noted in the documentary that the footage came in an old Soviet canister that had information labeled on it that was consistent with info written directly on the film reel. The numbers on the film's header matched the canisters they came. The header of the film had the crest of the KGB on it, and the term for top secret is shown in the first few seconds of this footage and image to the right. Having real-looking alien footage is one thing, but including the original film reel canisters means you are extremely close to proving 100% authenticity. This is something that has traditionally lacked in other more popular alien videos such as the widely known Alien Autopsy or the Alien Interview videos. Several KGB documents. In the documentary, several KGB documents are produced to prove the film is authentic, along with credible testimony from a former Soviet KGB operative who claims to know about the event. At first everyone believed that those debris were part of some novelty aircraft manufactured in the United States or England, said Pavel Klimchenkov, a former KGB operative. but having done some measurements material analysis, we came to the conclusion that none of the domestic or foreign manufacturers known to us could have produced this apparatus, at least not in the conditions existing on this planet. Along with Pavel's testimony, authentic KGB top-secret documents were obtained by the filmmakers, allegedly costing them $10,000. The documents described in detail a crash site recovery operation of a disc-shaped object and organic remains. Based on the credible testimony, KGB documents, expert film analysis and the general good feeling one gets when watching this interesting crash site video, it is safe to assume that this film indeed may be authentic. What about the autopsy? This footage will be posted in our second part article along with thoughts and analysis, actors, training exercises, skepticism. Some have put forth the argument that an American production crew filmed the footage in March 1998. These claims are put forth on websites claiming to know the truth about this footage. To date they have failed to show even one current photo of any of the soldiers in the film nor any statements from the actors that they were indeed only actors in this film. This should be easy to obtain if the footage was recently filmed. Some have put forth the argument that an American production crew filmed the footage in March 1998. These claims are put forth on websites claiming to know the truth about this footage. To date they have failed to show even one current photo of any of the soldiers in the film nor any statements from the actors that they were indeed only actors in this film. This should be easy to obtain if the footage was recently filmed. Another theory suggests the film was a training exercise. Yet no one has produced witnesses verifying this claim. One skeptical viewpoint suggests that the object's thickness is far too small to support any would-be alien pilot. The craft's outer edge as seen on the image is only 12 to 36 inches. However, it is not necessarily indicative of the overall thickness of the craft. The image was taken from the only part in the video sequence where the craft's edge is visible, and since the camera never goes behind, there is no way to tell how much depth the craft may have on the other side. Additionally, if you consider the side facing us may actually be the bottom, we can easily see that this craft can easily fit the traditional flying saucer shape as demonstrated by the below images. In this documentary they claim that, since they only were able to acquire 4 canisters of film, more film footage of this incident is available, such as the entire digging, cleanup, and inside the craft investigation. To this date, almost a decade after it went public, no other videos have surfaced. A UFO crash site allegedly filmed by the Russian KGB in March of 1969 in the Sverdlovsk region of Russia. The footage was later obtained by documentary filmmakers who then published the movie, The Secret KGB UFO Files. A film expert noted in the documentary that the film came in an old Soviet film can and the numbers on the film's header matched the cans they came in. The header of the film has the crest of the KGB on it and the term for top secret. An autopsy of the alleged pilot of the UFO is seen in the documentary film. Soviet doctors examined the burnt torso of the entity and it is revealed that the 3 doctors died 1 week later, all from cerebral hemorrhages. Death certificates are presented as proof. Several KGB documents are produced to prove the film is authentic. Some have put forth the argument that an American production crew filmed the footage in March 1998. These claims are put forth on websites claiming to know the truth about this footage. To date they have failed to show even one current photo of any of the soldiers in the film nor any statements from the actors that they were indeed only actors in this film. This should be easy to obtain if the footage was recently filmed. Another theory suggests the film was a training exercise. Yet no one has produced witnesses verifying this claim. UFO aliens may have helped build pyramids of Giza, says Cairo University archaeologist. Head of the Cairo University Archaeology Department, Dr. Ayla Shaheen in December 2010 had told an audience that there might be truth to the theory that aliens helped the ancient Egyptians build the oldest of pyramids, the pyramids of Giza. On being further questioned by Mr. Marek Nowak, a delegate from Poland, as to whether the pyramid might still contain alien technology or even a UFO with its structure, Dr. Shaheen was vague and replied, "I cannot confirm or deny this, but there is something inside the pyramid that is not of this world." Delegates to the conference on ancient Egyptian architecture were left shocked. However, Dr. Shaheen had refused to comment further or elaborate on his UFO and alien-related statements. Down below is 90's The Secret KGB UFO Files documentary, that deals with the fact that Russian had already discovered the tomb of alien humanoid in Egypt and something is beneath the pyramid. The Secret KGB UFO Files documentary interestingly supporting the head of the Cairo University Archaeology Department, Dr. Ayla Shaheen claim as well. Actually, ancient Egyptian writings very often talk of beings from the sky opening and bright lights coming down to teach them technology and give them wisdom. Many pictures and symbols resemble UFOs and aliens. Possibly aliens built the Great Pyramid. And these solid long-lasting construction techniques were adopted by the Egyptians. Ancient Egyptian legends tell of Tebzepi, or the first time. This is described as an age when sky gods came down to earth and raised the land from mud and water. They supposedly flew through the air in flying boats and brought laws and wisdom to man through a royal line of pharaohs. And of course, this was all thrown out the window when Christianity came along. Keep in mind that the gods were the one and only religion that there was. No other conflicting beliefs? Why? Well, because it was fact, not faith. The modern church would have you believe it's just a myth. But you have to ask yourself on the edge of Occam razor, what truly indeed is more likely? There has always been the question. How did the Egyptians feed and care for the 100,000 slaves that it would have taken to build the ancient structures like that of the pyramids in Egypt? 1 minute it is a very backwards country and almost overnight a highly advanced and technological culture sprung into existence. We now have the answer to that very question and evidence that the Egyptians had extraterrestrial help at that, thanks to Russia, the KGB and a top-secret project called Project ISIS. Astrophysicist, neurologist and science advisor in Advanced Propulsion System gained access to the files of Project ISIS. This was a top-secret project brought about by KGB concerning the discovery of the tomb of the visitor in 1961. Up until Sci-Fi purchased this exclusive footage from an agent of the Russian mafia, it had never been seen outside the top-secret facilities of the KGB. Sci-Fi showed it one time on television and as it stands today, no evidence of this film or the project is available. Except what we have copies of here given to us by a client that had taped the original show. This video is a powerful documentary with actual footage filmed by the KGB and verified by specialists in the field. Authentic film footage. If we can somehow bring attention back on Project ISIS and prove it out, it will change the history of the beginning of the civilization of man. During the Cold War, Nikita Khrushchev was determined to show the world that communism was superior over the democracy. As he realized that it would be too costly to compete with the US in the space race, Khrushchev chose to go the other route. Having over 300,000 agents in the secret police and espionage organizations, he focused most of this resource on alternative science, such as paranormal phenomena, psychotrometic weapons, biogenerators and mind-altering machines. 1920s, during the Stalinist regime, a dark room was created where the KGB conducted psychotronic weapons research on prisoners sentenced to die and political dissidents. After 1936 these files were transferred to the secret archives of the KGB, continuing on with their paranormal research. Khrushchev achieved great success with his biogenerators and machines to alter human minds, which worried, naturally, the United States, knowing that the Soviet Union was there to conquer and overthrow. Russia, being that its borders surrounded the largest landmass of the world, had the largest amount of UFO sightings. If they could capture one of these flying objects and reverse engineer it, they could have the greatest advanced aeronautical designs. They got lucky in January 1986 when a spacecraft crashed in Dalgorsk but remained intact. The craft was back-engineered and the process was quite successful. But to achieve the most superior advancement in global domination, they went in search for something that was only a rumor or legend. The Chamber of Knowledge in Egypt. If the legends were true, storehouse of knowledge left behind by ancient visitors from outer space was concealed in the Great Pyramid. A team of archaeologists were composed of Egyptologists from the Russian Soviet Academy of Science, was sent to Egypt. The fearing that the CIA would learn of this expedition, the Kremlin operated with complete secrecy. By the late 1950s, Egypt accounted for 43% of all the Soviet aid for Third World nations. When they started the ISIS project, the Soviet military personnel in Egypt was estimated over 20,000. The heavy military presence was used to disguise the efforts of the mission scientists headquartered in Cairo. They would operate under the guise of Arab peasants or Russian officers. To speed things up, in 1959 the KGB recruited professional informationalists to wiretap Egyptian officials. This paid off in July 24, 1960, when a conversation was recorded that would then change myth into reality. The official had been given a call that two Bedouin had stumbled upon the tomb of the visitor. The Bedouin were in the hospital and kept repeating, "The visitor God." At this moment in time, Project ISIS became top priority, and all efforts were made to immediately follow up by having the Bedouin show them where they had found this tomb. SEIFI was able to purchase several documents and film footage as to the KGB documentations of their findings. Taken out of Egypt and brought to the secret facility of the KGB was this memo to high-ranking KGB official. My agents had secured the notes of one of the scientists working on the tomb of the visitor findings. Another was the inventory of contents taken from the tomb as follows. Location of finding: undisclosed, 15 crates of relics, 1 partially mummified body, 1 stone sarcophagus, 8 hieroglyphic samples. Old report from a project scientist that was one of the first to enter the tomb. During the inspection of the wall segment, we noted that a strange magnet-repulsive force seemed to be emanating from the rock. We were unable to find any scientific explanation. Cryptologist report. Partial decoded message on tomb wall indicating a prophecy of the return of the winged gods. The Kremlin took the cryptologist report very seriously. KGB was ordered to determine target locations: planets, stars, galaxies. They had to duplicate the stars as they would have been over Giza thousands of years ago. They finally found it, in the stars and constellation of Orion during the year 10,500 BC. Although it was possible that the builders could have been working off plans of a time before the pyramids was constructed, this was proven not to be the case. Metal and synthetic materials of tomb were determined to be of unknown origin, and the tomb was carbon dated, giving it a dating of 10,500 BC, meaning the pyramid had to have been made at 10,500 BC. Skins of film were purchased by SEIFI through the Russian mafia agent, which originally came from the maximum security archives of the KGB. These skins contain film of KGB filming the process of the tomb and sarcophagus being opened. Sci-Fi had this film analyzed before purchasing by experts in this field. Finding no evidence of fraud, SEIFI purchased skins of film. The documentary is in black and white, showing soldiers entering the tomb without gas masks. As they opened the sarcophagus, you can see toxic fumes escaping and the reaction of the soldiers as they were being affected. It also shows the mummy contained inside. The film shows the soldiers leaving the tomb fast, and then a chemical warfare specialist team comes in with protective clothing. There is talk from one that was there in the tomb, that the energy inside, during the first days of exploration, was very high. They also had a team of psychics go in and do some special readings of the tomb. It later goes on to show the KGB and Bedouin loading trucks with crates to be shipped back to Russia. According to KGB documents, researchers began to wonder if the pyramid was designed for one particular purpose. They thought it was possibly a machine, being that it was designed like a three-dimensional triangular depiction of a hemisphere. Their thoughts were there must have been a reason why it was designed for resonating with the planet. Their thoughts went to a prism, and that the pyramids have powers to alter the cosmic rays, that the pyramids are huge prisms capable of concentrating energy, capturing light from the stars, which would initiate a process which would turn the pyramid into an interstellar transmitter. The three pyramids and SPHNIX could be integral parts of an immense machine designed by alien engineers linked by a master control mechanism inside the Great Pyramids. They noted that the passageway goes to main chamber, and above the sarcophagus was a tunnelless star shaft. They reasoned that when a specific star alignment occurs, a streak of energy goes down the shaft. Scientists speculated that the radiant energy hitting the sarcophagus could initiate something similar to a cold fusion reaction. The prism structure of the pyramid would then magnify and transfer to the corresponding pyramids. A united beam of energy could erupt, creating a cosmic beacon used by alien starship for future navigation. According to ancient legends all around the world, they all have the same thing in common. The visitors were like men but more like gods. They were giants. They traveled among the stars. They brought us the knowledge. Legends of the first emperors of China were called the Sons of Heaven and made the first pyramids of China. Mexico and Yucatan have similar legends. Starwalkers can be found throughout Egyptian texts and American folklore. The visitors are described as the giants, man/gods, giants or titans. And it seems all cultures may be traced to a single parent civilization. Could it be E.T.? Later on in the documentary, it shows them working on the mummy, attempting to give it a face and identity. A computer projection of the mummy was made as it laid in the sarcophagus. Experts that were there to observe the fluorescent reconstruction of the face described to Sci-Fi that if they had not been there themselves, they would not have believed what the face revealed after reconstruction. When skull and face was completed, it showed a humanoid type: large cranium, large eyes, small chin, small teeth, but not Earth humanoid, but some being that had to have been extraterrestrial. Later, using underground radar technology, the KBG found a passageway under the tomb of the visitor. Directly below was a large chamber. They believed they found the chamber of knowledge, but was afraid to open the tomb, thinking it could be a Trojan horse, capable of blowing up the entire planet. They decided to seal the tomb, wipe away the location of the tomb and close the project. It seemed, however, that all were affected by the discovery. Some had personality changes. Some disappeared entirely, others committed suicide, and others no longer could support their old religious beliefs. The first official report of sightings, that we are aware of, was by King Tutkremeni about 3,400 years ago. Sightings continued through the ages. Sightings seemed to pick up with man mastered the skies. But when we conquered the inner workings of the atom, the aliens of Orion stepped up their observation with an explosion of UFO sightings that continue up to the present. UFO abduction reports began to sweep around the world in the early 60s. A pattern was developing, with nearly all abductees reporting physical examinations, insertion of objects and artificial inseminations. Many women abductees believed they were being impregnated to give birth to alien hybrids. In the last decade, reports such as these have risen dramatically. It may be highly likely that the genetic colonization program that started back in the ancient times has resumed. The question was asked, could they be cloning themselves by implanting their alien genes into human DNA? Are humans being transformed into an alien species through genetic engineering? The ancient Egyptians have always said that our DNA came from the heavens and that someday they would return. Did the KGB discover the truth in the chamber of knowledge about the true agenda of the it? And what was discovered on the wall of the tomb of the visitor prophesies that they would return. But when? Secrets cannot be contained. Not even KGB secrets. A group of scientists, computer programs, doctors, etc., shortly after the discovery of the tomb of the visitor, came together to discuss the possibilities of this discovery. They fully believed that the visitor was none other than Osiris, the alien king. Thus they gave themselves the name, the Followers, based off the followers of Horus in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. According to Egyptian beliefs, a family of gods came from the stars to Egypt. They were the ones that gave the people of Egypt the knowledge and wisdom. Later they left Earth back to their star homes, except for Osiris. He stayed and taught the followers. It was their duty to protect and keep the ancient knowledge he gave them until his return. The Egyptians were astronomers and fully understood that the stars were the map to the great god Osiris and the afterlife. And followers would secretly come together in their homes to discuss the possibility of the return of Osiris. They believed that the second coming of Osiris would herald a new age for mankind. They believed that when the tomb was discovered and the seal was broken, a signal was transmitted to the visitors. They calculated and estimated the time it would take for the electromagnetic signal to reach the constellation of Orion. They figured that they could return no earlier than April 23, 1985. With that time frame in mind, the group left Russia and took off to Egypt, never to return. The only remains left behind of their meeting with the visitors was a newspaper clippage found in the KGB archives of a group of tourists disappearing in the middle of the night in Egypt, 1985. And one home movie project with film. This film showed the group in front of the pyramid at night. It shows a light appearing in the sky, the group dropping to their knees in prayer, the light becoming brighter and then nothingness. A daughter of parents that were part of this group was shown the home video by the SCIFI team, of which she recognized her parents and burst into tears.
Did anyone happen to see a documentary on sci-fi called Secret KGB UFO Files? I happened to catch this yesterday, and while I'm leaning to the side of skepticism, I have to admit that it was intriguing. Basically, the story goes, in the early 60s the KGB discovered a tomb at the Giza Plateau containing an EBA. Luckily there was film footage, haha. The grainy film contained footage of archaeologists dressed in KGB gear opening the tomb of what was thought to be an ancient Egyptian king. When they do, toxic smoke overcomes one of them and the other two run out. It is later learned that the body isn't human. The footage looked as if it had been produced to look old. Also included were shots of psychics levitating in the tomb. One thing that caught my attention is the archaeologist that was supposed to have been claimed by the toxic smoke was later helping move crates of evidence down some stairs. Despite the curious film footage, the documentary was very interesting and had me glued from the jump. 5 decades. American agencies have stockpiled information on UFOs. So did their counterparts behind the Iron Curtain. Soldiers, scientists and spies all paint a disturbing picture of the KGB's secret campaign. Is this the stunning proof that the Soviets recovered something not from this earth? When US researchers began looking into just how much the Soviet government knew about UFOs and extraterrestrial visitation, they were not surprised to learn that the Russians took the subject very seriously. What they didn't expect was evidence of ancient alien visitation, paranormal properties associated with related artifacts, and most shocking of all, of a mass abduction in 1985, among the piles of materials obtained from former Soviet spies. Some extremely puzzling and disturbing documents and film footage surfaced confirming rumors, which had been circulating for decades. In the late 1950s and 60s, the Russians became very interested in a number of unusual and newly discovered archaeological sites in Egypt by interpreting ancient symbols. One of those sites was believed to contain the remains of a life form not from Earth. Startling top-secret film footage, never before seen outside the Kremlin, confirms the Soviet mission to recover and analyze these remains. Join host Roger Moore in an exclusive investigation into one of the most compelling events of our time.